It's time for me to remove the alternator from the engines. Identical match, so I can put this aside. Hello guys, this is back Windy DIY Auto and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be changing or replacing the alternator on this 2015 Chrysler Town and Country. Okay, I've done a video before where my battery light came on and stayed on while the engine is running, and I troubleshot the system down to the alternator. So I ordered the alternator through Amazon, and this is the new alternator, just came, brand new alternator, and today I will be replacing it. Okay, so the video where I diagnosed the problems, troubleshot the system, will be down in the description below. Okay, so today I will be replacing the alternator, and let me show you the process, how I go about doing it. So let's get into it. Okay, the first process is safety. I will disconnect the negative post on my battery, and then the next thing I will be doing is raise the vehicle just high enough where I can get underneath it and have access to the belt tensioner where I can remove the drive belt from the alternator, and then I can go from there. So let's get on with it. The tools I'm going to use are a 10 millimeter wrench, 13 millimeter socket, a 3/8 drive, speed handle. I'm going to need pliers to compress the clamp on the upper radiator hose because I will have to drain just a small quantity of fluid from the radiator that I can have access to the expansion tank. So I'm going to need these pliers here to compress this clamp right here. I will have to remove the radiator hose and get it out of the way. Then I can remove the expansion tank for the coolant and the fan shroud right here. Then I have to remove this guard right here, the engine guard. So let's get on to it. First process here is disconnect the negative post here for safety. The next step is I will have to raise the vehicle up and remove the passenger front wheel. I will have to remove this wheel to gain access to the belt tensioner underneath here. So let's get into that. Now, I placed the block on the rear wheel here just for safety, just right here, just in case if the vehicle were to be rolling back off the jack, at least I have a secondary support there. The next thing I'm going to do here, which I've already pre-done, I placed the jack underneath the frame here. See, here's the frame right here of the body, and this is the frame for the vehicle. This is where the jack should attach, right in this little notch here on the jack. It should sit right in there. And this is where the jack should be placed underneath the vehicle, right there. Okay, now this is the jack hand to raise the vehicle here by placing it like this and press and rotate it like that. But I have a 3/4 socket here with a 3/8 speed handle to speed up the process. So just enough to get the front wheels off the ground. Then I can place the jack underneath the chassis, underneath, not high enough. So here is the frame. I'm going to place the jack stand underneath the frame. Then I can actually let it down just enough where it supports the vehicle. That's good enough right there. Leave the jack in place. Just in case the jacks fail, at least I have a support here for the vehicles. Okay, so now I can finish removing the wheel to gain access to the tensioner and the drive belt so I can begin the process of removing the alternator. Okay, remove the wheel here. Okay, the next step is removing this guard right here that I can have access to the belt tensioner, which is right here. Here's the belt tensioner right here from all the devices where the belt attached to. By removing this guard here, I have a clear shot to rotate the belt tensioner off the belt, and I can remove the drive belt. I have to remove this clip right here, and a 10 millimeter bolt is right here. Another one is underneath right here, this clip right here, and another clip is right here. So 2 clips and two 10mm bolts in order to remove this guard right here. Okay, here's the first clip. Move this clip out of here. That's why I need these side cutters to remove the clips. That's one right there. 10mm bolt is right up in here. Here's the other bolt, 10mm bolt. Okay, and the next one is this clip right here. Okay. Okay, and then we remove guard right here. Now here is the belt tensioner right here. Now all I have to do is to release the tension of the drive belt, which is this guy right here, and it runs around the crankshaft pulley or harmonic balancer. Here's the drive belt, goes around the harmonic balancer, and it rides over the water pump, then down and around the AC compressor here, and then it goes around your alternator, which is right here. Now this is the guy, this is the alternator, and this is the guy I am going to replace right here. So in order to remove the alternator here, we have one bolt here up there. I will show it from the top. So let's get into that. Next step I am doing is release the tension of the drive belt, and then I can go ahead and start working on the alternator from the upper side of the engine. Okay, so now I can use a 3/8 breaker bar and release the tension. This 3/8 breaker bar here, I'm going to use this breaker bar and attach it to the belt tensioner right here and just release the tension of the belt. Right like that, and take the belt off the alternator. Okay, so now I release the tension of the belt. Now, okay, release the tension of the belt. Now I can remove the belt off the alternator and release the tension. Let it goes to rest right here. So now the belt is loose. You can see the belt is off the alternator here. Here's the alternator. That's the alternator right here. The belt is off the alternator there. Now I can go from the upper end and start process of removing the alternator. Guys, so now I'm on the upper end. Everything else now is on the upper end in order to start the process of removing the alternator. So first I'm going to remove the engine cover here. It's just snap on just like that. Here are the port where these studs sits in. 1, 2, 3, that's 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. These 4 section here. Get this out of the way. The next step, guys, is removing the expansion tank here. Now the expansion tank has a hose for overflow. In case the radiator overflows, it runs into this hose here and goes into your expansion tank. So this expansion tank is very easily installed. It just pushes down into a slot just like that, so I can pull it up and just let it slide down in the bottom. By disconnecting this hose right here, this is the overflow hose from the radiator, and it goes to the expansion tank. So now I can just lower the expansion tank to the ground. And here's the expansion tank. The hose attached to it just like that. That's what that is. Now I'm going to use this hose here for drainage, to drain the radiator into a bucket or a container when I get to that point. So I get this expansion tanks out of the way. The upper radiator hose right here with this clamp, I will disconnect this clamp here and remove this radiator hose and just get it out of the way, because the fan shroud here, this is what the fan attached to, the fan shroud assembly. I have to remove this here. This is a very easy process of removing it. All it takes is just 2 clips on the upper end, just compress them and remove the whole fan shroud out of the way. By removing this wire harness here, there are 2 wire harnesses attached to the fan assembly. One is on the upper end and one is down where the fan is connected to. I'll show you when I get to that point. But for right now, the first thing I'm going to do here is to drain the radiator just enough to allow the fluid to be lower than the hose port right here. So let's get into that. So I'm going to use this hose here. Like I said, this is the overflow hose to the expansion tank. I'm going to connect this down there. Now, if you look down there, there's a red cap right there. That's a valve right there. This red cap here is a valve. Once you back out this valve here, there's a port below it. That's going to be the drain port. So I am going to attach this hose here to that port, and then the other end would be actually drain to the attached to the drain pan underneath there. Okay, I'm going to attach one end into the drain pan and the other end into the port right below this drain valve right here. So I'm going to keep the hose on the drain port while backing out on this drain valve here. So now the fluid is going to be running out of the radiator into the drain pan. And I just need maybe about a 3/4 of a gallon, just enough to lower the fluid level on the upper end where I can remove the radiator hose without making any mess. I believe this is the easy way of replacing the alternator. I've seen videos where people went under the front passenger wheel area and removed it from there. They removed the studs, but I'm not going to go through that process. This is normally when I used to work at the dealer, this is how we've got it done. And this is how I'm doing it. So we should have enough fluid drained from the upper end of the radiator. I think it's just enough I have down here. It's about a 3/4 of a gallon or less here. So now I can close the port right here. And I made no mess. Now I can pull the container out. So this is the quantity that I drained from the radiator. This is clean fluid here. I may reuse it because this fluid here is clean as a whistle. Now the fluid level is below the upper radiator hose. I can now compress the clamp here, and then I can slide the upper radiator hose off without making any mess. Open up this clamp right here. And get this radiator hose out of the way. Okay, first, this wire harness here, I need to disconnect it. In order to disconnect this wire harness, I use a pick and pull it backward, just like that, and then compresses it like that and slide it out, just like that. See, here's the lock. This thing here locks it in like that. So this lock here, it locks by pushes in, and then it locks. This is the clip here. You compress on this clip right here. If you look inside it, where it compresses down inside there, see? It compresses it down and pulls it out. By this lock pushes forward, it locks it. When this pushes forward, it locks it from being compressed right here. So this is the safety right here. So I disconnected this wire harness here, and there's another one right below down here. But I have to release these two clips here for the fan shroud. Here's a clip here for the fan shroud. This right here. This is one clip right here. Compress that one. And there's another one. By compressing this clip right here, you can raise this stuff up. See, it locks in. In order to pull the fan shroud upward, you have to compress this lock here, pull it upward. You do the same thing on this side. Now here's the other one. Compress this side here inward and pull the whole thing up, just like that. Now you pull it upward like that. Upward. We have access to the other wire harness for the fan right here. This right here. You do the same thing with this clip, pull it upward, and compress on this guy here and pull the whole thing out just like that. And then this clip right here attached to the fan shroud, you just pull it out, just like that. And then the fan shroud is now free flow, can come right out of there. Just like that. Okay, this is one connector here for the fan. And I believe this is for the thermostat, which is this guy right here, or resistor. Forgot what this thing is. I would have to look it up in the owner's manual. I forgot what they called it. But anyway, this is how you disconnect the wire harnesses. Okay, so now we got the fan shroud out of the way. We have access to the alternator. Here's the alternator right here. Here's a 13 millimeter bolt, 1, 2, and there is one forward right down here, which is on this new alternator. Here's one bolt here, which is this guy here. Another bolt here, which is this one here, and then there's a stud in the front that has a nut on there, which is this one in the front right here. I can feel it. And once you get those two bolts out, before you do that, there's a 12 millimeter bolt nut back here that attached the battery cable, which is this cable here, and the wire harness that's attached to the alternator below that. I'll show you how to get that out. Okay, before we start loosen the bolts on the alternator, I am going to remove the battery cable and the wire harness to the alternator. So in order to remove the battery cable, there is a safety cap on there that all you have to do is compress it right here and take it off. These two lips right here, just compress these two lips and take it off just like that. Okay, this is how you remove the 12 millimeter nut on the back of the alternator, which is the battery cable attached to right here. And then below that is this wire harness here. Now this wire harness here is the same concept as the fan shroud electrical connectors. It's the same process. This red clip here, pull it backward just like that and compress on this lip right here and take the whole thing out. This is how to remove the wire harness. Now the battery cable right here is just a 12 millimeter socket, which is I have right here, 12 millimeter socket. Attach it to the 3/8 drive, and okay, on the nut back here, which is the battery cable attached to, is a 13 millimeter socket. Okay, so here is the 13 millimeter nut that attach the battery cable to the back of the alternator. Now this is the nut I'm going to remove here in order to remove this battery cable. So here I go. Okay, now I can hand remove that nut and remove the battery cable. Okay, so now I can remove this cable, and here is the harness that got attached to the alternator. So now we have all the electrical wire disconnected from the alternator. I can now begin removing the bolts, which is one here, another one here, and then there is one in the front, a nut in the front here. And here is the other fastening bolt nut right here. This is the stud right here, and that's the nut, the 13 millimeter nut right here that attach the alternator right here. So there are 3 attachments for the alternator, 2 bolts and 1 nut, which is in the front part of the engine right here. Okay, so that's going to be the next one. Okay, so here is the nut that comes off the forward side of the alternator. Now I can finally remove these 2 bolts here. Okay, guys, this is just for information. What I used to do when I used to work for the car dealer, I used to put a guard right here just to prevent the alternator from falling out of my hands or coincidentally hit these fins on the radiator. Is very critical. Whenever you're removing the alternator this way here, be very careful because these fins here are very delicate and they're for cooling. So be very careful when you're releasing the alternator from the block to hold, keep your hands on it, that it doesn't fall out of your hands and hit the radiator fins. Okay, so now all the bolts and nuts is removed from the alternator. It's time for me to remove the alternator from the engine. So just all I have to do is just move it forward and like that and take it out. Slowly take it out of here. It's very, very close call here. And here is the alternator, the guy here. So now I can match it up with the new one, see what it looks like. Yep, identical match. So I can put this aside and just do the reverse to removal. Okay, so now I can go ahead and install this new alternator. So now I brace it back underneath here, slide it forward slowly. Okay, now we got the alternator back in place here. I can go ahead and start attach the bolts. And go ahead and so this is the forward, this is the forward nut right here, the one that I torque, and these two right here. These are the all 3 points that attach the alternator to the engine blocks. Okay, one forward up here, which is the nut on these 2 bolts. Okay, the next step is to attach the harness here. Slide it up in there, locks it. See, that locks in. And then battery cable here. Go ahead and attach the battery cable to the post in the back of the alternator here. Then use a 13mm socket and torque it down. Then go ahead and put a safety guard around the battery post on the back of the alternator. Slide it on there nicely, and that's it. So now everything is in reverse and it's taken off. So the next step is install the drive belt. Okay, now it's time to install the drive belt. And I got a local schematic here. I locally drew on this piece of paper here. So if you were facing the engine from the right side, first I'm going to attach the drive belt around the harmonic balancer, then around the water pump, then around the AC compressor, then around the alternator, over the idle pulley, then around the power steering pump, and the last place I'm going to attach it is the belt tensioner, which I will release the tension of it, and I wrap the belt around it and then release the tension, and that will take control of the belt tension right there. So that's going to be my next step. Okay. Alright, so there we go. There we go. Okay. Alright. So okay, so here's the harmonic balancer. First I got the belt on the harmonic balancer. Then it goes around the water pump. Then around the AC compressor here. And then right around the alternator up here. Across over to the idle pulley. Around the power steering pump here. And then the last place I attach it to the idler, to the tension right here. So let me verify the belt rod and make sure that everything is in place. Harmonic balancer around the water pump, down, seated nicely inside the grooves of the AC compressor, seated nicely into the grooves of the alternator, crossover, seated into the grooves of the idle pulley, around, seated into the grooves, the power steering pump, and then right over the belt tensioner. It looks nice. So now I'm done with this side here. I can now move on to install the radiator, electric fan shroud, the expansion tank, and the guard for the front of the engine here. And then I can go ahead and pour the fluid back into the radiator, and I can begin the process of starting the engines up, bring it up to normal operational temperature, and then go ahead and start checking the alternator charging system to verify that the alternator was a fault that caused that battery light to stay on. So let's go from here. Here, I'm going to verify that this radiator valve here is tight. Okay, now this is tight and the drain is right down here. Here is the drain. Okay, so guys, these are the locks where the fan shroud sits in. Right here, these four sections where the fans, and these are the locks that locks the fans into position. And this is the slots right here with the expansion tank sits in right here. So here's the expansion tank, and it sits in there, just like that. Now, that's how the expansion tank attached to the fan shroud assembly. And this is where the air overflow hose attached to from this point here, and it runs over and attached to here. In case the radiator is overheating, create the back pressure, fluid comes over. In case the pressure overpower the radiator pressure cap here, and allow fluid to run over into the expansion tank. So that's going to be my next process. So now I'm going to install the fan assembly. I'll slide it down inside there. Before I get too far, go ahead and attach an electrical connector to the fan here. Slide it down in there. Okay, then I can go ahead and finally put the fan in place here. Okay, now the fan sits perfectly in place. I can go ahead and connect this harness right here. Locks in and push this thing back in place. Lock that in place. Lock that back in place. Now I can go ahead and install my expansion tank. Okay, it goes my expansion tank. And I can go ahead and install my overflow hose here. Here. In place. Place. Okay. Go ahead and put this back in place right there. Now I can go ahead now and install my upper radiator hose. Um, I can put this back in place with belongs. Okay. Some place there. Right here. Okay. Now once I start the engine up and bring it up to normal operation temperature, I can go ahead and check the fluid levels. And if I need more fluid, I go ahead and put more fluid in it. So now I have everything back in place. I got the alternator back in place. I got all the harnesses and cable attached to the alternator. I reattached the drive bed back, make sure that the routing's properly routed properly. I reinstalled the fence road or the fence road assembly, reconnected all the wire harnesses. I made sure that the radiator drain valve was closed, and I reinstalled my expansion tank and the hoses and the upper radiator hose, and I poured the fluid back into the radiator. So now I have everything back in place. I can now go ahead and put the engine covers back on. Okay guys, so I got everything back in place. The only thing I have left to do is reconnect my negative post, start the engine, bring it up to normal operational temperature, and then I can go ahead and check the charging system. So now I can go ahead and install my negative post battery. I can now go ahead and do operational check before I install the guard and the right front wheel, just to make sure that the charging system is working. That's charging. Okay guys, I got everything back together. The new alternator has been installed and all the components has put back together. And now I can go ahead and uh, can reconnect my negative post and start the engine and go ahead and check the charging systems. Okay, install the negative terminal to the battery post here. Now I can go ahead now start the vehicle and check the charging systems. Okay, the battery light disappeared as soon as the engine started up. Now I can go ahead and check the alternator, see if it's actually putting out the required voltage. And yep, 13.6, and that's good. So I know the alternator is charging and everything is back to normal. So that's it. Thank you guys for supporting my channel. Oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you very much. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Okay, and also I am going to throw some videos into the description section, so go ahead and check that out, guys. Thanks again. Goodbye.